Okay, so I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself on a dance floor. It's, say, 2005. The music isn't frantic like it was in the 90s.
Right.
It's not hitting you over the head with these huge synth leads or, aggressive drops. It's rolling. It's groovy.
Mm-hmm.
It's got this bass line that's just so chunky and infectious, and it feels like it could loop forever, but you never get tired of it. You are right in the middle of a decade that didn't just tweak electronic music. It completely rewired the whole thing.
It was a total system reset. I mean, they're looking at a 10-year window where this underground sound didn't just bubble up to the surface. It took over the entire ecosystem.
And that's what we're diving into today. Our research materials call it the golden age of tech house. We're looking specifically at that sweet spot between 2000 and 2010.
Yeah.
And looking at our notes, which are based on the second chapter of the tech house story, this was not a subtle shift at all.
Oh, not at all. It's funny because when you look back, most genres have this kind of slow, creeping burn. But the documentation on this era, it makes a very, very specific claim. It says, tech house exploded.
Right, in all caps. Exploded. That's such a strong word. It implies, I don't know, shrapnel, pieces of the sound just landed everywhere.
And they did. But, to understand the explosion, you have to get the pressure cooker that came right before it.
Okay.
The late 90s were dominated by really fast or really aggressive or, super commercial sounds. You had your high-octane trance. You had hard techno. By the time 2000 rolled around, the club world was ready to exhale.
Ready for a new groove.
Exactly. They wanted something that was still driving, still techie, but it had that house music soul, that kind of sexy rolling groove.
So let's unpack this explosion then, because tech house is a term that gets thrown around so much now, right? Sometimes not in a good way.
Sometimes it's an insult, yeah.
Yeah, for generic music. But in this specific decade, it was the most exciting thing happening. And it seems like it was driven by these very distinct, tribes or labels.
Tribes is the perfect word for it. This wasn't a monolith. The golden age was defined by these pillars of sound that were totally different from each other, but they all lived under the same tech house umbrella.
And the first one that just jumps out from the research, and I think a lot of people listening will have a visceral reaction to this name, is Dirtybird.
Oh, absolutely. You just cannot tell the story of the 2000s without talking about the Dirtybird phenomenon.
The material points right to Claude VonStroke as the ringleader. So for someone who wasn't there, how would you describe what VonStroke and Dirtybird actually did to the sound? Because it wasn't just straightforward techno, was it?
No, and that's the genius of it. Before Dirtybird, tech house could be a little bit, serious. A little gray.
A bit star.
Yeah, very European, a very loops and tools.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Claude VonStroke and this whole San Francisco crew come in, and they just injected this huge personality into it.
It felt chunky.
Chunky is the word.
Yeah.
It was so bass heavy. It had funk influences, hip-hop influences, these weird little vocal chops. It was almost like Booty House decided to meet techno.
Huh, yeah.
And the source material highlights this as a pivotal shift.
Yeah.
Because it gave people permission to just have fun again.
Mm.
It took a lot of the pretension out of the music.
That's interesting because when I listen back to those early VonStroke records, they feel thick.
Yeah.
They have this real weight to them, a very different texture than what was happening in, say, Berlin at the exact same time.
Completely different. And that's exactly why the genre exploded. It wasn't just one flavor. If you wanted that grimy, bass-heavy, let's just party vibe, you had Dirtybird. But then, as our notes point out, you had the other titan of the era, Get Physical.
Get Physical. Even the name sounds more, active.
It was polished. If Dirtybird was the backyard Mystique Q that accidentally turned into a rave, Get Physical was the sleek, stylish, late-night operation. They were releasing tracks that crossed over. They had melody. They had production values that were just off the charts.
So you have these two massive pillars rising up. On one side, the fun, bass-heavy Dirtybird crew.
Yeah.
And on the other, the sleek, almost melodic Get Physical crew. It feels like the genre was stretching its arms out, trying to grab different kinds of listeners.
Exactly right. It was widening the net. And that's crucial for any golden age. If a genre only does one thing, it burns out really fast.
Yeah.
But because you had these strong, distinct identities, VonStroke doing his thing over here, the Get Physical team doing theirs. It created this really diverse ecosystem.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting for me, while some people were making the sound bigger and bassier, there was this whole other movement happening at the same time, a movement that went in the exact opposite direction.
It's a counter movement.
Yes. The source material calls this the rise of minimal tech house. And honestly, looking back, this will be the most intellectually fascinating part of that whole decade.
It's the great paradox of the era, isn't it? The genre explodes by shrinking.
So let's talk about the trinity that our notes mention. We have three names that essentially became gods of this specific sound: Ricardo Villalobos, Luciano, and Loco Dice.
The holy trinity of the after hours, for sure.
Okay, let's start with Villalobos. I feel like his name alone evokes a very specific image for anyone who followed the scene back then.
Villalobos is more than just a DJ in this story. He's almost a shamanistic figure. The research highlights him for a reason. He deconstructed the music. He would take a track and just strip away almost everything, the big snares, the crashing cymbals, until you were left with just a kick drum and these tiny, weird, organic sounds, clicks, cuts, whispers.
That's hypnotic.
It demands your attention. In a world that's getting louder and louder, Villalobos forced the crowd to lean in. He'd stretch tracks out for 15, 20 minutes. It was a complete rejection of the pop structure of dance music.
And then you have Luciano.
Luciano brought the warmth. He was definitely part of that minimal ways, but he infused it with this Latin organic percussion. It wasn't cold, robotic minimalism. It was emotional. It had real soul.
And the third piece of that puzzle, Loco Dice.
Loco Dice is the bridge. He came from a hip-hop background, and you could really hear it in his sets. He had that rolling, chunky groove of tech house, but he locked it down with a precision that was just lethal on a proper dance floor.
The source links this whole minimal movement to one specific label, Cadenza.
Right. Cadenza was the aesthetic home for this sound. If you saw that Cadenza logo on a record, you knew you were getting something intricate. You knew you were getting that micro house feel where the devil was really in the details.
So help me understand the dynamic here.
Right.
We've got Dirtybird making these big, fun, wobbly bass lines. Then we have Cadenza and Villalobos stripping everything back to the bare bones. How did these two things coexist? Why is this all considered the same golden age?
Because they fueled each other. It was a dialogue. You might start your night with the raw energy of a Loco Dice set driving percussive, and you might end it at 8 a.m. with Villalobos playing something totally weird and abstract. They were different sides of the same coin, which was this rejection of the mainstream. They were both searching for a groove that was deeper than anything on the radio.
And that search for the groove, it didn't just happen in the studio. You can't separate this music from the places where it was played. The source material really hammers this point home. Geography matters.
Geography is everything. A genre doesn't become a global phenomenon without a headquarters. And for tech house in the 2000s, that headquarters was an island.
Ibiza. But not just Ibiza in general. The notes specifically say Ibiza adopts tech house.
Adopts is a very polite way of saying Ibiza was conquered by tech house.
Okay, but we have to be specific here. When people think of Ibiza, they might think of foam parties, huge commercial clubs. That's not where the sound was thriving, was it?
Not at all.
The source points to one place, DC10.
DC10 is the church. If you want to understand the golden age, you have to understand what DC10 represented back then. It wasn't a super club. It was literally a hangar at the end of the airport runway.
Wow.
It was raw. It was dusty. The planes would fly right over your head, drowning out the music for a few seconds, and the crowd would just go insane.
It sounds like the total opposite of the whole VIP bottle service culture.
It was, and that's why minimal tech house worked so perfectly there. In a glitzy club, minimal can sound boring. But on that terrace, in the afternoon sun, surrounded by thousands of people who are there purely for the music, that sound just comes alive. DC10 championed that underground spirit. It gave artists like Villalobos and Luciano a residency, a home, really to experiment.
So DC10 validates the sound. It essentially tells the rest of the world, this is what's cool now.
Precisely. The Sarca Loco party at DC10 became the most important party in the world. If you played there, your booking fee went up everywhere else. It was the filter.
But the network didn't just stop at the island. The source kind of maps out this golden triangle. We leave the sun of Ibiza, and we head to the concrete of Berlin, and specifically to Watergate.
Berlin is the engine room of electronic music, right? But Watergate was so crucial for tech house specifically. It opened in the early 2000s, right in the middle of this explosion, sits right on the River Spree, and it had that famous LED ceiling. which is totally revolutionary at the time.
I've seen pictures of that ceiling. It looks like you're literally inside the music.
Exactly. And musically, Watergate was the perfect partner to DC10. It was sophisticated. It took that Get Physical sound, that clean, modern production, and gave it this high-tech, beautiful environment. It legitimized the genre as something serious, something artistic.
And then we cross the channel to London. The source highlights Fabric.
Fabric, the institution. London has always been this melting pot of sounds garage, drum and bass, jungle. But when Fabric really embraced tech house, it was a massive signal. Fabric is known for one thing above all else, its sound system, specifically in room 1.
The floor that vibrates.
The Bodysonic dance floor. You literally feel the bass through your feet, up your legs. Now imagine playing a minimal track there. Imagine a Loco Dice set, that stripped-back sound, where every single bass kick is isolated. On the Fabric system, it just hits you in the chest. It showed that this music wasn't just background music, it was physically powerful.
So what we have is this incredible infrastructure that's built up over a decade. You've got the creative hubs, the studios of Dirtybird in San Francisco and Cadenza in Europe. You've got the testing ground on the terrace at DC10. And then you have these urban strongholds, Watergate and Fabric.
It was a perfect feedback loop. A track gets made in Berlin, it gets tested in London at Fabric, it becomes an anthem in Ibiza at DC10, and then suddenly it's global. That is how you get an explosion.
Which leads us right to the conclusion of our source material. It wraps up this whole decade, this journey from 2000 to 2010 with a simple 3-word statement: tech house everywhere.
It's the ultimate victory condition, isn't it?
But everywhere is a tricky word. It really is. Because we started this conversation talking about a niche underground movement, about weird stripped-back sounds and quirky bass lines. By 2010, the source says it's ubiquitous.
It became the default setting for dance music. And that's what a golden age does. It establishes a new standard. By the end of 2010, you didn't have to go to DC10 to hear tech house. You could hear it at a local festival in the US. You could hear it in a small club in South America. It had successfully colonized the global dance floor.
So let's just look at the legacy of this. We've tracked the rise. We've seen the players VonStroke, Villalobos, Luciano. We've visited the clubs. Why does this specific decade matter so much to you, the listener, today?
Because it created the blueprint for the modern festival scene. When you go to a festival today and you see that massive techno or house stage, the sound that's coming out of those speakers, its DNA was written between 2000 and 2010. The way the drops work, the way the bass lines roll, the way the DJ builds a set, that language was codified by these guys.
It's like we're looking at the actual architecture of modern nightlife.
Yep.
Exactly. Before this era, genres were much more segregated. You were a house DJ or you were a techno DJ. This golden age just blurred all the lines. It created this hybrid tech house that was palatable enough for the house heads, but still driving enough for the techno heads. It unified the dance floor.
But I have to ask, the source ends on tech house everywhere. And usually in culture, when something becomes everywhere, that's the danger zone.
It is. It's the double-edged sword of success.
So if 2000 to 2010 was the golden age, does that mean what came after was the decline?
That's the big debate, isn't it? I mean, there's an argument to be made that once a sound is everywhere, it loses its edge. It becomes a formula. When you have 1,000 producers all trying to copy that one Dirtybird bass line or trying to mimic that Villalobos minimalism but without the soul, you just get saturation.
It becomes a caricature of itself. Right. And some people would definitely argue that post-2010 tech house became a bit too commercial, a bit too predictable. But that's what makes this 2000 to 2010 window so special. It was the period of discovery. The rules weren't written yet. They were literally writing them in real time at DC10 and Fabric.
It was the Wild West before the strip malls moved in.
That is a perfect analogy. It was wild, it was experimental, and it was so exciting because nobody knew exactly where it was going. They just knew it was exploding.
So for you listening, if you pull up a playlist of 2000s tech house, try to listen for that sense of discovery. Listen for the weirdness in the Villalobos tracks. Listen for the raw, unadulterated fun in the early Dirtybird stuff. Try to hear it not as old music, but as the sound of a wall being broken down.
And remember the context. Remember that this was the sound of the after party taking over the main event.
That is such a fascinating way to frame it. The after party winning the war.
It really was.
Before we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. We've talked about how this genre conquered the world. It started in these small, dusty rooms and ended up everywhere.
Global domination.
But if history is a cycle, What's the next underground sound bubbling up right now that's going to do the exact same thing? Is there a new DC10 out there right now, some dusty hanger somewhere, playing a sound that doesn't even have a name yet?
That's the beauty of electronic music, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is always a drum beating somewhere that hasn't reached the main stage yet.
And when it does, we'll be right here to do a deep dive on it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for stepping into the time machine with us today. It's been a blast revisiting the Golden Age.
A pleasure, as always.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Keep listening.